Hi, I'm Elise Chaffins with the Dominion Post. And today I'm speaking with Frank E. Flowers, writer and director of the new film The Bluff, coming to Prime Video on February 25th. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, can you just give us a brief synopsis of the film just to get started?
Yeah, set 200 years after the golden age of piracy. Priyanka Chopra Jonas plays a fishwife living on a desolate island that is invaded by pirates who have a connection to her past, and she has to fight them off. And it's visceral, and it's intense, and it's raw, and it's authentic, and it's a badass pirate movie with a hard R.
Yeah, it is all of those things, yeah. So there are so many excellent fight scenes in this movie. Can you talk about just the stunt choreography and the work that Priyanka and Carl Urban put in for this?
Absolutely. Well, the great thing about working with Agbo and the Russo family is they have delivered some of the best action in the history of cinema. So we were stacked. We had a great team, and every idea I could come up with, we put into the hopper, and we made sure we just kept building and building and building and building. And so the approach we had with the action was really trying to make sure that it was credible, that it was visceral, that it was raw. Sometimes that means I would go in the gym with the guys and we would be like, what would you do in this situation? Like, I know this would look good for camera, but what would you do for real? And we tried to take that energy and that impetus, and also what would it take for a woman of Priyanka's size, history, to fight dudes who are twice her size. She got to fight dirty. She got to grab a conch shell, and she got to beat a dude down in the face sometimes. And so we were able to mix that and let it stem from character. And the great thing about Priyanka and Carl is everything came from character. Everything was thoughtful, from the fighting styles to the emotion of the fight. You get a second unit director like Rob Alonso, who's one of the best in the business, who doesn't want to talk about how we're going to cover the. He wants to talk about character. He wants to talk about what weapon and what is the story of that weapon and how that got into pirate number four's hand. And we went that deep. There was literally boards where we would go, these people from this character, you may never know his name. You might only be a little blurb and a dead man walking in the film, but what's his fighting style? What's his history? What armor does he have on? We'd sit with costume, and we'd really think about how do we tell this visual story of what I imagine pirates to be, which was a team of the best killers from everywhere in the world assembled and scrapping on this ship. And now you get that strike force coming onto a small island that's unprepared. And that's where you get the bluff, the magic, the intensity, the action.
Yeah, actually, that's kind of one of the things I wanted to ask you about because I think this film has a somewhat unique take on pirates. Can you just talk about developing that aspect of the film?
Absolutely. Well, I'm from the Caribbean. I grew up in Cayman Islands. And even as a kid, nobody really dressed up for Halloween. We dressed up for Pirates Week. And Pirates Week was this national festival where I would sit up on my dad's shoulders and they would have pirate ships come in and cannons and explosions and pyrotechnics, and they would sword fight in the streets, and the pirates won. They'd take over the island for a week. And then they'd go in the street and they'd also like throw us doubloons and candy. And you're like, oh, these pirates aren't so bad. So I had a very interesting, complex relationship with pirates. And as a kid, you're not quite sure what's real and what's not. So when my writing partner, Joe Ballerini, one of my best friends from USC, we have this thing called the Bad Idea of the Week Club. We just call each other and be like, here's a half-cocked pitch about something. And it's really just a forum to vet stuff. And clearly some of the ideas aren't that bad. So he said, what about Straw Dogs with pirates? And Straw Dogs is one of my favorite movies from the 70s. It's, I know, a little controversial, but this idea of a man defending his home, right? And standing up and fighting and being forced to fight. And so we took it with that heart. And we started there. We reached out to one of my best friends and a collaborator that I've worked with for many years, and someone who sees the value of Caribbean stories and depth, and Zoe Saldana, who is just, her and her sisters have this company called Sinistar. So Zoe, Marion, Sicily, and I, we started to bring out this character of Ursula that would become Ursula, and this woman fighting for her family, and this invasion. And as the movie started growing, and the idea started growing, we knew we needed a bigger canvas and we needed a team that could help deliver that. So she opened her Rolodex and she called the Russo siblings. You know, there's Joe, Anthony, and Angela, and they flipped for the idea. And they also, you know, they have this idea, this whole philosophy of the best idea wins. So we'd get in the room, and Joe and Anthony would be there. We'd read through the script page by page, idea by idea, and we would just spitball, all of us. And we'd go, how about this idea? And this would be good. Okay, that's on the board now. Then what about this? And then I would add, and they would add. And it was just this truly collaborative, and it's hard to say, like, I love my gang. I mean, we just had the whole love fest for the past 4 years. And it just kept growing till we found the right partner with Amazon, who also believed in it, who saw the value of not just the action, but the culture, the authenticity, the fresh perspective. It was not an easy movie to get made, right? There's not a bunch of stories about women of color who are fighting around in the 1800s against, like, that's not what every studio is looking for. So the fact that they jumped on board and championed this, I am forever grateful, and I'm so proud of the movie that we all made together.
Yeah. That kind of leads into the next thing. I think The Bluff has this really distinct anti-colonialism message, but it doesn't feel preachy at all. It's mostly just this really great action film. Can you just talk about your approach to that aspect and, yeah, how you kind of like weaved that message into the film?
Well, you know, for us, and something that Zoe Saldana and I had talked about in the early stage, was this idea of representation in history, and not for the sake of anything besides authenticity, right? If a pirate ship is a collection of the best killers from everywhere on the planet, that's a certain look, right? If this island, which Cayman Brac was, is a pit stop for shipwrecked sailors, escaped enslaved people who had just been granted freedom, deserters from Cromwell's army. This was the DNA, this was the history of this island. So we go, you put that in the mix, and you get something that's, it's not preachy, because we're not even trying to say a message. We're just trying to be authentic and be raw and make it real and make it gangster, right? We're making a gangster movie with pirates. And so for me, it was just baked into the whole DNA of the movie. And I think that's what makes it fresh, but also just made it so fun to be able to explore weapons from every corner. I mean, me and Rob Alonzo, the second unit director, we would come up with this pirate's from here, this pirate's from there. He might have this kind of a sword or this kind of a gun. And you're at this moment, which we said it in the future, 200 years after the Golden Age, where you're going from muskets, which take 30 seconds to load and 4 seconds to shoot, to Connor, Carl Urban's character, coming through with a 20-shot revolver, which is just bananas, because you can't even buy them nowadays, right? And I was like, oh, that's how one man can kill a village and make it credible, right? So I'm a geek for that stuff, so we were able to really explore the transition of firearms. Many of that stuff, they would blow up in your hand or they wouldn't shoot, but it was cool to be able to have both, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the title of the film isn't Bloody Mary or Ursel, which it feels like it almost could be, but it's called The Bluff. Can you talk about the role that you see the Cayman Islands playing, and Cayman Brac in particular playing in this movie?
Well, for me, obviously, being Caymanian, Cayman was an important part of it. The story could really take place anywhere, but what I think separates this movie is that little bit of authenticity that you feel. It was something that I could bring expertise to. I'd never directed a movie of this size, and I knew that I had a team that was going to support whatever vision we came up with for the action. I knew we could achieve it. So I go, what can I bring to the table besides my vision as a director, besides working with the actors? I go, there's a expertise, that little eye to detail that really infused not only the visuals, but the way we shot, right? We were all practical locations. The house fight, that's a real house. They went through that window. That yard is attached to that house. It wasn't like, here's a studio, here's the exterior. Like, we built a house that you could live in if you wanted to. I mean, it doesn't have insulation or air conditioning, but is pretty nice. Phil Ivey is a proper house, man. And then that village he built, I showed up. I think there's a video on Instagram. Like, I showed up and I was blown away. You know, you would go inside the sheriff's house and I'd open drawers, things that would never be shot. And there was a ledger of, you know, that Phil had researched. Phil Ivey, our production designer, he had researched what was going on, his team. So that nuance and that detail, you might never see it up close, but it comes across in the film, and I think that's part of what makes it feel the way it does.
Yeah, yeah, actually, can you speak a little more about shooting on location and yeah, like how that yeah, went because that's just such a different scenario than filming in a studio.
Absolutely. And we did some studio work. We did a hybrid for the caves. We built, and even that was immersive. You went in, there's a 40,000 square foot cave that once you stepped in, you were lost. You couldn't see a light. It was very immersive, and that was a big part of what we wanted to do. The house was built on a sugarcane field that was hundreds of acres, so there was no modern buildings, no planes, no telephone poles. So when we went to set, we were on the bluff. We were stepping back hundreds of years. For me, you know, we shot a week in Cayman Islands and the rest on the Gold Coast of Australia. I wanted to match, and if for no other reason, that if it was not right, I could never go home again because people would be like, man, why you put that tree in there? That's not a Cayman tree, and that sand don't look like that. So I brought a little vial of Cayman beach sand. I gave that to Phil's team. They searched all over the continent of Australia. I think they wound up having to go overseas, bring 30 tons of sand to match that. But it was Phil and the team and the studio and everyone going, it matters. Let's be authentic. You want it to be authentic? We're going to back you up. And that love and that care, I think, just infused everyone from Carl and Priyanka so that when they came to set, they had done so much research. They wanted to bring details that evolved the character and that led to this, this emotional action, I call it, that in that final matchup, you know, you're rooting for both of them a little bit and you're feeling their perspective as you go through right to the last 10 seconds of the film or 2 minutes of the film. You're like, how's this going to end and where's this going to go?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as we're kind of wrapping up here, something I always like to ask folks is what did you learn from making this film that you would want to take into a future project?
It was beautiful to be able to collaborate, and you know, filmmaking is collaboration, and it's finding a team that you trust and allowing them to make something great. And for me, honestly, I got a deeper connection to trust God because there were days where it just seemed impossible, where it's like, how are we going to do this? And then I'd say my little prayer, I go to set, and I come in with a smile on my face, my big energy, even though I'm stressed about 100 things, and it worked out. And I give that up to God. I give that up to my team. Some of it, you know, would be weather, so I can't give it up to the team, but most of it I go, we were brought together for this moment in this time. We treat everyone with respect. We had love for everyone. And so for me, it was that idea of it's all gonna work out. Trust God, move forward, make your movie, tell your stories, and surround yourself with an incredible, incredible family, which is what we had by the end.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again. Best of luck to you with the release of the film. Yeah, I hope everybody tunes in on the 25th to give the BLUFF a watch.
Absolutely. And what's exciting is it works on your tablet, it works on your phone. We really designed this movie that if you want to watch it in your home screening room, that's great, but you can watch it on any format. And I watched it many times on every single device to make sure that it sang. So I'm excited for people to experience it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.